All right, welcome everyone to the Wallet Interoperability Special Interest Group call for August 18th, 2025. Today on the agenda, we will hear about EUDIPLO, which is the middleware to interact with the EUDI wallets from Mirko Mollik. So really looking forward to that. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. We are recording this call. It will be posted on the meeting page right here later today. We are following the Linux Foundation antitrust policy and the Open Wallet Foundation Code of Conduct. Let's see. And are there any introductions before we get started? If anybody is new to the call and wants to hop off mute and take a moment to introduce themselves and share a little bit about what they're interested in or working on in this space, now would be a great time. If anybody has any announcements in particular as well, now would be a good time.
A quiet group today.
Yeah, lots of new faces though. This is great. Thanks everybody for joining if you're new to the call. Let's see. We can move into project updates. Let's see. Starting with Akapai. I know we had RC0 for 1.3.2 that had some credential revocation handling changes, refining webhook payload structures, modernizing async task management, and then some changes as well while opening the ASCAR store. And then with Canon as well, we have a PR. Stephen, did you want to give any more detail or anything I missed there in terms of overview of what's happening with Akapai?
That was a great overview. The only other bit of news is the Canon PR has some GitHub-y issues with it that have to be cleaned up. The Canon team didn't get to that, but they will be getting to it this week. They've got additional effort going into that, so the Canon PR will be worked out. So we've had a couple of this is a fairly extensive update to enable more usability on the management side of say a server or a verifier, and so managing how storage is done for non-key related material. And so that'll improve that. And so there should be an update to that one this week.
Awesome. That's great to hear. All right, let's see. Does anybody have other updates or announcements they'd like to make related to progress on any of the other projects listed here?
I know lots of progress was made on Credo over the last little while. There's been lots going on. One that I've been involved with is getting the didWebDH working so that it can be used in wallets. So that integration of that with Bifold and BC Wallet in particular should be happening this week. All the pieces I think were put together last week as far as the final polishing on the Credo component of that.
That's great. Yeah, awesome to hear. All right, let's see. Any other project updates? All right, let's see. And looking ahead to the upcoming topics on this call, coming up, we've got Longfellow ZK presentation, as well as Trust Remaining Protocol from the Trust Over IP Foundation, as well as ID Solutions, Journey, and Vision from the UNICC. So stay tuned for more information about those. Let's see. All right, with that, let's see. Are there any other announcements or anybody who's new to the call who wants to introduce themselves and share a bit about what they're working on in this space? Feel free to jump in. All right, cool. With that, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Mirko. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Char. So let's share the screen. And the most important question we all have, do you see it? I think so.
Yes, looks great.
Awesome. Yes. So I proposed a new project to the Open Wallet Foundation and wanted to give a chance to present it because most people ignore reading the documentation and like it more when somebody is guiding them through it. So the most important question, of course, how to find a name for a new project under the shower this time. And the idea was to build a wallet connector. So it's actually not a wallet like a business wallet, but the idea is here to connect your existing systems that you have with the connectivity. So basically, same idea as AkaPi has to do. And for all of you, what is the acronym for EUDIPLO? It's European Union Digital Identity Protocol Liaison Operator. So I will challenge you later if you know the name still, but let's talk about the benefits. Yes, if you have any questions, raise your hand. I should hopefully see it. Otherwise, we have enough time in the end. Yes, so as I said, the main idea of this connector is that you don't need to work through your the whole wide web to scramble all the different SDKs out there. We have wonderful SDKs in the Open Wallet Foundation, like, for example, to deal with SDJOT and so on. And we even have great libraries like Credo and so on. But in most of the times, people just want something that is just running like a simple Docker container. And this is the main idea behind this. So it's a container that is supporting, on the one hand, for the issuers. So you can issue credentials with it. You can present credentials for this. We will see this later. It is also supporting, it was added to the VCI spec recently, presentation during issuance. Then, of course, what's really relevant is security by default. So all the actions, administrations is secured by OpenID Connect. The idea is plug and play, so not to define a new kind of protocol that you have to implement on the transport layer, but it's which basically on the HTTPS level, because most programming languages out there are able to define HTTP requests and sending and receiving JSON. Then, of course, it comes with a web client, so it will be easier to configure this whole service. We will see this later, and also a list of compatible wallets. Unfortunately, this list is empty right now, so I've tested it with the Funke wallets, with the Animo wallet. We will see it later, and also for the Ubiq wallet. And when you think that your wallet is compatible, look into the chapter linked here, and please make a pull request so we can edit here. And what's also interested is that it's supporting multi-tenancy, because when you have multiple relying parties or issuers you want to manage, you don't want to spin up multiple Docker containers, but just have one that scales. Yes, and the advantage, I don't really know if AkaPi is doing the same, but the main idea is that you are not touching the source code of EUDIPLO, of course, when you want to contribute, but during development or for your business case, the main idea is you are feeding it with config files in JSON, and then you are just calling it like, here, please start an issuance flow, or please start a presentation flow. Then you will get back the information, and you will get notified on specific events. Yes, and as said, you can quickly start up it running. No licenses required or so. It's quite easy to do so. And yes, if you want to do it, it also has a quick start tutorial. So one approach is, of course, it has an open API interface. So when you love Swagger, you can go with it. It's totally fine to go with it. But when you want to go with the web client, we will see later, it's also in the repository. So it's a monorepo. On the one hand, we have the connector, and on the other hand, we have the client. You can start this when you feel more like having a GUI, so a web client to interact. And the main idea, of course, is it should be very simple for developers to start up and running. You don't want to spend hours to configure your horizontal scalable database or your HSM. So you can start it in the default mode. Then, for example, it will use SQLite as a database, but it has a pluggable interface. So when you're going to production, you can switch to Postgres or any other database that can be configured. You can find more details in this chapter, and the main idea is that you can just define the parameters via the configuration files, so via environment variables. The same goes for key management. During development, they will just start in the database unencrypted, which is nice for development, not so good when going to production. So here, one external key management that is already implemented is Vault from HashiCorp. So we don't have any critical key material in our application in case there is a security vulnerability or so. And also here, there is the chance to configure also other key management systems, like, for example, Azure Key Store or whatever. So contributions welcomed. And yeah, so looking into more details, as I told, we have the web client. We will see this later, how to get it. So here the documentation should be clear for you to interact with it and maybe to get more insights on the issuance one. So here the idea is a separation of configuration files. On the one hand, we have credential configurations. Here you are defining the different types of credentials you want to configure. So for example, you want to issue an MDL when you are, of course, authorized, or a membership card. You would define here the different fields. And in the issuance configuration, you would reference these credentials configuration and say, for example, okay, do I have specific authentication approaches, like, is it a pre-auth flow via OpenID for VCI, or is there some kind of authentication required? Yes, and then we have the different API endpoints already defined. So the main idea is here that you are requesting VCI requests where you say here, please generate me a session, for example, issuing a PIT. The middleware, which is the EUDI, the EUDIPLO servers, will return you a credential offer as the string or as a QR code. So you just have to pass this QR code to the end user. Here it's up to you how you're doing it. You could even print it out, send it by letter, and then they could consume it. Then the user would do the normal OpenID for VCI flow, either an auth or pre-auth flow. Here we have the option to interact with webhooks. So you could either pass the values of the credential during the offer that you say, for example, here, I want to issue Char a credential that she is doing a wonderful job at the Open Wallet Foundation, or you say, well, I need some kind of authentication in advance, and when she has authenticated by herself with the MDL or PIT, I will fetch the credentials from my database on demand, return it, I will create the credential, send it back to the user, and in OpenID for VCI, there's the specific notification point because because you sent the credential, you need some kind of acknowledge. So here the wallet would say, I have accepted the credential. And then again, EUDIPLO would send a notification to your webhook that you configure to say your system, hey, Char has successfully stored her credential in the wallet. There's no need to configure these these webhooks if you don't are able to do it or so. You can still fetch all the data from the session endpoint. So you don't have to expose specific ports on your service. Either you don't want to or you cannot do so. All the data is still in the middleware, but the idea is that it's not a big database of personalized data. So normally when you, for example, doing this approach, like during the credential request, you would get the claims, issue the credentials, pass it to the user, and will never persist it to your database. So there's no potential leak in case of the database it's getting hacked. Yes, then of course, multiple information about authentication. So to trigger, for example, the flow, we have the pre-authorized code flow. So people that are familiar with the OpenID Foundation spec should know about this. So here we have no user authentication required. This is normally for use cases where you say, okay, the user is already authenticated. He has logged into, for example, into the into a protected forum or so system, and then we can just present the QR code. Then we have the typical authorized code flow when you, for example, say on your website, well, the user is not logged in, but I want that it's authenticating against, for example, my Keycloak instance. So you're using Keycloak, your external authentication mechanism to authenticate the user. And last but not least, we have the presentation during issuance, which is relevant when you say, well, please present me some credential from your wallet to authenticate yourself. So more information how to configure this can be found here in this document. And of course, also revocation is supported. You can read it. Presentation, kind of similar. So here the key concept is like that we have the standard presentation that you say, okay, I'm asking for an MDL. And here it's not built on presentation exchange protocol, but based on the digital credentials query language. Main reason for this is because it's much more easier to define it, and it will be a requirement of the architecture reference framework. So here it's the same example that you are creating your presentation where you are defining your DACL query where I say, okay, I want to request a PIT with these specific claims because you only want these specific selective disclosable claims. You don't need the whole PIT. Then for Europe, it's relevant to provide the intended use. So here I can present to the user like, yay, I need your attributes because for identity verification, it's required by GDPR. And last but not least, I want to send this data automatically to my provided service in the background. So for example, to consume the data, to onboard the user, whatever. And I can easily manage these configurations also via the API. I can upload them, I can patch them, read them, and also delete them. So classical approach. And here again, we are creating the different flows, pass it to the user. We have the interactions, and in the end, I'm getting the information. And yes, so then here we have more information, more for this in the future. So of course we have monitoring with Prometheus in the background that you can monitor a system. And for the registrar, it's for GDPR, which will become relevant around next year. But since we are working on the specifications, it's quite nice to have a system that you can use to actually test it. Yes, and as said here, the list of wallets is empty because we are right now using the internal Funke wallets that are only available via test flight. So I hope that there will be some publicly available wallets in the future that can be used for interacting with EUDIPLO. So here also it's mentioned which tech stack is supported. So it's OpenID for VCI draft 15, OpenID for VP 24, and ASCII.VC draft 8. The reason that, for example, DITS is not included is simply the case because DITS is not in the scope of the architecture reference framework, and because the main idea here is to support the credentials or the technology that has to be supported to interact with EUDI wallets, and this is already quite challenging. And when this is done, we may also add other protocols like DITS or so. But for now, it's limited on this scope. MDoc will come later, and also W3C VCDM to issue EAAs. Okay, so I think in the architecture, I already mentioned the most important stuff. Yes, for the API, it's protected via OpenID Connect, so it's quite easy for your existing systems. You are getting a client identifier and a client secret, and then you can interact with it. Here, you could either say that you are using the integrated OAuth server, so that you will manage the clients and the clients internally, or you could say I'm using an external OpenID Connect provider to manage it. So for example, to integrate it into your existing infrastructure. It's coming with an open API interface @/API, so it's quite easy to generate your SDKs like with Open API SDK generator. So you will have it's very easy to read the different datas with it. So it should be easy to go. For the development, yes, as I mentioned, it's a monorepo. We have the backend, so the whole servers, which is the Nest application. So it's written in TypeScript. The web client we will see later is written with the Angular framework, and the webhook is just a test instance also that can be deployed to Cloudflare. But it's not a must-have or run locally, so you can emulate your own application in case you want to, test it around. Yes, and then also you can get some information of the whole structure. So Compodoc will render you a whole graph, so you see how the different modules, services, and controllers are interacting with each other. Additional documentations. You could spend some time, but I would skip this for now if you are not interested. Yes, as mentioned, everything is on the Open Wallet Foundation website repository in the Labs repository. The main idea is here to have two branches. So we have the main branch where we are right now, which is, as the name says, the actual building on the main branch. And then we have the latest branch where it's planned to publish the stable releases. Like right now, it's in version 1.5. Breaking changes may occur because some things are not optimized yet. And the idea is more like to have some breaking changes and going to a very efficient product as fast as possible. So for the people that are interested in the Swagger API, can do so in the future to define raw JSON. For the rest of us, we have the client. I've spin up a test instance. So here, normally you can log in with the credentials you're getting. So you just have to know the endpoint where it's hosted, but you can totally also do on your local host, the auth server you're using, and then your different client IDs and client secrets. As mentioned, you can also manage multiple clients. It's guaranteed. It's not so every tenant is isolated, so the different clients will not have access to specific configurations or anything else that could end up in a disaster. So to give maybe a little demo time, hopefully it's working. So normally here we would have defined our credentials. Let's say I want to issue a PID. So here I would say I have the configuration details to say, okay, this is for the display configuration. I could also set default claims. So here the classical Erika Mustermann we will use. Then, for example, here we can also define the disclosures frame. And of course, the JSON schema in SD.VC you can pass, which will also help this application to automatically render your application. When creating credential configurations, you can assign different keys. So here via key management, you can say, okay, for example, I'm a school and I have to use a specific certificate with a specific private key because of the trust chain. You can easily import this, and on the back, it will be either imported in the database or into HashiCorp in the vault. depends on your configuration. And when you have done it, you can easily reference it here. You can also say, should the credential be key bound, so that the wallet has to manage its own key pair to show ownership, or is it maybe claim bound that you say, okay, you need to present, for example, your diploma together with your PIT or your MDL to show that you are the owner. And of course, you could say, what is the status management? Do I need it? Could be that you say, okay, I have a short living credentials. I don't need any status management. So here you can configure it. Of course, you want that your credential is looking pretty nice. Here you could say easily, okay, here I could add all the information for this. For the people that say, well, I already have configuration, I don't want to copy paste anything, you can just go to the overview and see the JSON file. So here it would be quite easily for you to copy paste it out and save it, or you could just say, okay, I have an existing configuration, paste it in, and then you are free to go. And yes, as mentioned here, we have the different values. So let's copy the classical Erika Mustermann for us. We will need it later. Then we would say here, I want to define a new issuance configuration. In this situation, I said, for example, here, okay, I could give it some description for me internally. I could use batch issuance if this is required. As mentioned here, I could say the different type of authentication. In my situation, I say it's a pre-authorized code flow. If it's not pre-authorized, I would here, for example, say, okay, what's the configuration, for example, to which authentication server it should be redirected, or in the presentation during issuance, which credential should be presented. Yes, so here I could also say here which credentials should be used in this issuance. You could use issue multiple credentials with it. So, but here we just want to issue the PIT. And last but not least, I could define a webhook. So my backend or some other services gets notified when the credential was issued. So when we are doing this, I can here say, okay, I want to issue a PIT. I will automatically get the formula about this. So I could fill this out, but I'm lazy. So I will just copy paste the Erika Mustermann that I got. As mentioned, when you want to integrate it in your existing system, you would, of course, interact with the API. So here I say, okay, please issue this. Then I see this overview of this automatically. And let's open the wallet in parallel. So here we are using the Animal wallet. I would see, okay, I'm interacting with EUDI wallet dev. Yes, I got the PIT with these information, and it got accepted into my wallet. So here I know the information is fetched. And so right now, I don't know what's the result of the notification response, because this wallet right now hasn't implemented it. But here I would have the whole overview of all the sessions that are open or so. I could also filter this for it. And then in the situation, let's say I want to request the PIT, I would say I create an offer. I ask for the PIT. I see here, okay, these are the informations. Yes, I want to do this. Same procedure again. I'm scanning this. Here we see interact with the instance here. I also know here I have the organization, because we have the German registrar that has verified this identity. Yes, I want to continue. Yes, I want to continue. So here I know, okay, I share the PIT. I enter the PIN. And something went wrong. So normally when everything would go great, I would see here the different data that got shared. And yeah, the same situation when we are going with the presentation during issuance. So fingers crossed this is working when we say, I want to issue this citizen approach. Again, we are creating an issuance offer. Yes, we want to interact. Yes, we see it wants to issue us a citizen pass. And here we now are getting a presentation response, which means, okay, it wants my address from my PIT. I'm sending this, and here it extracted. So the system behind this, it just extracted the address from my PIT and put it into the citizen pass for the town of Berlin. I accept it, and I got it in my wallet. And here I would have all the information, like, okay, which credentials were shared. So this is the values that were shared from the servers. I think I have hard coded the city because I do not live in Cologne. I live in Berlin. So here something got messed up on the webhook. But here I get all the information and also some debugging stuff that can be activated. So when you see that you have some problems with your wallet, you can just open the console and get all the HTTP traffic that will help you for debugging. So this would be the first, part from my side. So let's see if there are any questions out there. Stephen.
Fascinating stuff. That was very cool. Thank you. Very similar in concept to Akapai and Traction. Traction is the similar UI that for multi-tenant that is in the BC repository. So super interesting. I wondered about the key management. Is there any how is the key management system? Is it just in the same database? Any special handling around that?
Yes, so as mentioned, you can configure multiple key managements when you have configured it to run with the key management type for database. It will just store the private key as a JSON web key into the database unencrypted. So easy for development, but of course not recommended for production. For production, you would spin up a HashiCorp Vault instance, and then you could import the keys, but of course you cannot extract the private keys then. Right. So it should be kind of safe or more protected. And when you're going the hard way, you could even use an HSM also to manage your keys.
Okay, I missed that. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks for following up.
And as you mentioned, right now, only the elliptic curves, the ES256 algorithm is supported because it was much easier. It could be extended for other algorithms, but it's accepted by NIST and BSI, so it should be fine to go.
Yeah. Awesome work. This is outstanding.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to tell you who is already using it. I can tell you that multiple companies from Germany right now, bigger or smaller one, are using it for their proof of concepts right now because they signaled me, and this was also the intention, to spin up this project, that when you are in the develop or in the test phase, you don't want to spend thousands of euros a month for a product from some companies which do you not see any value of right now. Sarah, you have raised your hand.
Oh, yes. I just had a quick question that looks like there are some questions in the chat as well. Does this target the latest version of the specs? I mean, I guess for OID for VCI.
Yes, so it's using the OpenID, the Open Wallet Foundation spec from I think where Animo is also contributing for OpenID for VCI and VP, and the plan is of course to update it to the latest version. So for OpenID for VP, I think it's planned to be 1.0 compatible in the next 2 or 3 weeks. and also, of course, for the other libraries like SDJOT and OAuth and so on.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, and then it looks like there are a few questions from Pavel in the chat.
So I can see, so for example, Pavlo asked, do you see any interest from countries in using it for their EUDI wallet implementations? I haven't got any request from outside of Germany, but of course you could still use it. It's not limited, for example, to the German ecosystem. So the main goal is to be fully compliant to the architecture reference framework and so on. So technically speaking, it should be compatible with every EUDI wallet. And even when you say, well, you're building a wallet that is not officially an EUDI wallet, but has the same tech stack, it would be still compatible. Then here, second question, are the large-scale pilots being encouraged to adopt it in their use cases? The current large-scale pilots, the 4 we had, are coming to an end right now. I think they're officially, the last one is like running just for 3 more months. Sorry, 3 more weeks. So I don't think that they will start testing anything with it. I know that some companies that were in this potential, for example, in the LSP potential, are right now looking at this. And let's see how it's going for WeBuild and Aptitude, if there's any interest from companies to use it. Because beside, for example, credential issuance, also transaction request like asking for a QES authorization or payment authorization will be supported in the future. And last but not least, I see, would you say that this could work for business of any size, from small companies to large corporates? Yes, of course, because it's an open source project. So the license is Apache 2.0, so no license fees required. Also, as I mentioned, no external fees. Of course, for example, when you want to use a high available scaling system like an external hosted database or key management, costs may occur, but you could still run it on your own. The only thing you need, for example, is a web server, and the test instance I have right now is running on a server costing me like 10 euros a month. So I would say it's manageable. Of course, you need some basic, knowledge how to run it. Technically, somebody could say that you are offering this as a service. So here, for example, the client, as I mentioned, it's multi-tenancy. I haven't tested the scalability in Kubernetes or so, but it should work because nothing gets persisted in the RAM or in the file system, so everything is in the database. So here, of course, somebody could say, I'm hosting this for others, but for me, it's not the intention. So here, this is my personal instance I spin up to run some tests or so. Or for example, in the German project, we are doing some tests, but it's not designed to be a hosted or paid product, because then, of course, GDPR and all the contracts are required, and it's not my intention to do this. But feel free to do so, and even better, feel free to contribute. Then the next question, are we using any existing OWF libraries? Yes, we do. As mentioned, for the transport protocols, so for OpenID for VCI and VP, we are using the TypeScript implementation. I think it's officially called OpenID VC-TS. That is from the Open Wallet Foundation. And we are also using the SDJOT TypeScript implementations for the OAuth token list and for SDJOT BC. Okay, do we have more questions?
No, but I think it's been fantastic to see it, Mirko. Really good. Thank you.
Oh, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I think this is exactly what is needed now to get some speed in testing these things and making it easy. So thank you very much. Just a simple question, as I'm not a coding specialist of any sort, but a very simple question. How many wallets do you think that will be compliant with this in the next month? Do you see a long queue of wallet providers already wanting to be listed?
When we would downgrade the protocol from OpenID for VC from VP to draft 21, I think all potential wallets would be compatible. So up to 10 or 12 wallets would be. But I honestly do not want to have to manage all the different drafts. So the main idea is to say, okay, we will try to go to the latest versions as soon as possible. So all the wallet providers know, okay, when they have implemented this, they have the guarantee that the APIs also will not change. So I think, or I hope that for the end of this year, up to, let's say, 10 wallets will be supported. I know that 3 wallets will be public available in the next 4 weeks or so that are compatible, but the goal would be to reach it to 10 or so. Maybe it's also possible to set up some test suite so that you could easily go through this as a wallet provider. So to make it more easy. So please reach out to me if you need, for example, access to this instance. If you're a wallet provider, I'm happy to cooperate. Stephen.
Yeah, I was wondering who's the team behind this, and also wondering about how the project started.
Yeah, so the team right now, when you're looking at the commits, I think it's 99.9% me.
Okay.
Happily, I got Lucas, that is also actively in the Open Wallet Foundation,
Yeah.
that is working or contributing on this. I hope that more people will join. We are already got some feedback from at least one external person that says here's a bug, and so we see that there is some traction. So this would be the goal, to increase the library, or to building a community around it, so that this project can grow and fulfill the demand. Yeah. And the idea is, of course, to be community driven.
Mm-hmm. Just a matter of interest, when you started it, did you look at Credo as to it being the basis of this? It looks like a lot of the features are available in Credo already.
I agree. I honestly haven't tested it yet, because I was like, I just want to include the stuff that is relevant. And for example, Credo is also shipping with DITs and so on. And my main, I'm afraid that you're shipping a software with so much features that you don't have the time anymore to update it or to fix security vulnerabilities. So the main idea was like, go with the minimum as possible to build a MVP and then scale up. And so I think it would be manageable with with Credo. But for example, some features weren't implemented in Credo yet. So it also gave some free space to experiment a bit.
Okay.
Jim is asking, before David, I take you, I'm planning to migrate to Credo. Honestly, I don't know, because a lot of stuff is already implemented. And so Gradle and EUDIPLO are using the same libraries under the hood. So I think there wouldn't be much improvement of changing it. But open if you want to spend some time and make an analysis if it's worth it or not. For me, it's working the way it is. So yeah, interesting if you want to dive deeper in this. But now, David.
You're on mute, David.
Apologies. I think what you're representing is something, we're doing this project mapping work in the architecture SIG, and many of the projects have got many kind of subcomponents that could benefit from being recognized as independent components. So we've got a bit of plug compatibility. So it's really good to see it. And it's in labs already. I'm sorry, but has it been approved by the TAC to join labs already?
It is approved, yes.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, that's great. I will probably be in touch about doing the mapping because I think your documentation is excellent as well. Thank you. Could you put the link into labs for me as well?
I can do so. So you mean the GitHub link or?
Yeah, just the stuff that you've been walking through.
I'll do it now.
Yes. Here
There you
and
go.
then the
There you go.
documentation.
There you go.
Got it. Thank you.
We're both doing it. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
the documentation rendered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
I was wondering as well. So it looks like there's the Discord channel that I sent in the chat. There's following along on issues and PRs on the GitHub repo. What are the ways that are there any ways other than that people should keep up to date with the happenings? Will there be regular community meetings on this, or yeah, how should we keep up?
Yes. So I had some, I managed some project in the past and failed to get attention in the ongoing meetings. So if you reach out at the Discord channel anytime, I will respond as fast as possible. And I think when there are multiple people that want really to contribute, I think then it should be good to have a monthly meeting or so. But right now, the Discord channel would be the communication way, or of course, the GitHub issues to open feature requests, bug reports, or so. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. All right, let's see. What other questions do folks have for Mirko?
Okay, I think that's it. So, Chair, thank you for reaching out to me to present it. And also thank to the audience for the questions. And if you have other questions, feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you so much, Mirko. This was great to walk through the documentation and see a demo. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and really looking forward to hearing about the ongoing progress. And yeah, this was great. Such a good tool. All right. Let's see, and keep an eye out, everybody, for notifications about upcoming calls and topics. So thanks, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Mirko, for your time, and have a great rest of your day, everybody.
And you take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great stuff.